Disclaimer. Audio and visual lag may be present in the following video. We've had to use what we can during these strange times to bring you this video. Thank you for your understanding. Hey guys, Louie, and today I'm back with another video. It's another Monday, which means another vegan day. I'm here with Pascal today. Just flip the camera. There you go. That is Pascal.
Nice. Very nice.
He is a fellow vegan, and we're gonna be
cheers for letting me do it.
and yeah, we're going to be here today to be talking to you guys over 3 different videos, so the next 3 weeks, about the different sort of debates and the ideas behind veganism, the ethical side of it, the health side of it, and the environmental side of it. So that's our sort of game plan for the next 3 weeks. So buckle up, we're going to get this, we're going to go with this. So do you want to tell everyone a little bit about yourself, Pascal?
Yeah, sure. So, I might as well start with being vegan. So, I've been vegan since last June. So, however many months, I think it's 9 or 10.
Mm-hmm.
And it started. Seeds were planted a couple of years before, kind of ethical ones, and I saw a vegan or two, and they told me about it, and then I was like, "No, it sounds like a bunch of BS." And over time, I started to look into it, and I realised how I can justify it anymore. Then within a week, I just transitioned just like that, finishing whatever animal products were left in my house that I bought, so that wasn't wasted. And yeah, apart from that, I am an actor, writer, director, all that kind of stuff. Just an artist, really. Yeah.
Very cool, very cool. I've mentioned briefly sort of my reasonings in other videos, but obviously I'll go more into that in a later video. It's not about that today, for me. But yeah, so ethical reasons. So you're saying that you were more sort of persuaded by ethical reasons than anything else?
Yeah, because with the ethics, especially seeing what happens in farms, free range or not, the concept of life and sacrificing it for something that we don't need was already poignant enough. But the fact that it's so brutal, and it has to be brutal, it's a necessity for it to be brutal and as horrible as it is now because of overpopulation, and with that, the high demand within the population. And so I've kind of got to be a realist and say, I don't want to be part of that. And hopefully one day no one will be part of that, but
yeah,
that's that.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, absolutely. I think it's not morally justifiable. I don't think anyone can actually truly morally justify, supporting that industry, I mean, there's ways of getting around it, say religion, for example. That's one of the first things I want to talk about. And just to let you guys know, this video is about ethical reasons, just to put that out there. That's what we're talking about today. So religion is obviously something that, non-vegans can use to try and justify supporting those industries. And, I'm thinking of Christianity here, first of all. It's in the Bible that, God gave us these animals, but it's all down to interpretation in the Bible mostly. Some of it's obviously as it is. Go ahead.
I see. This is where studying philosophy was useful for me, because I actually looked into this. So, I'll tell you my conclusion now.
Yeah.
Religion, from everything I know about religions and belief systems, can never justify an anti-vegan stance, and this is why. So what you're on about is dominion and stewardship. So the dominion interpretation of the Bible, in terms of our relationship to the world and the creatures on it, is that we have reigns and control over all other life and the earth as well. God made us the center of his creation, and therefore we can do as we please. So that's one. It's a bit less common, and it's, in my opinion, a bit more arrogant. But then you have stewardship, which is how we're meant to look after nature and the gift that God has given us. And yeah, which makes sense. We're showing the way, we're guiding people, etc. But no matter what you think about, no matter what interpretation you take on either stewardship or dominion, if God has created an earth for us and has created creatures which can empirically be proven to experience pain, and we don't need to consume these beings in order to survive, then surely it's just a big middle finger up to God saying, you know what, we don't care. We're going to cause pain where it's not necessary. And on top of that, as a result of that, we're going to destroy your planet even quicker than overpopulation is already doing. So we look at all the. Everyone always thinks CO2 emissions is the most potent common pollutant of our atmosphere, when actually it's nitrous oxide and methane, which obviously come from animal agriculture. And so because of that, animal agriculture, as I'm sure you know, is, I think, the second biggest pollutant industry, pollutive industry, and it's more than all the transportation units combined.
Correct.
So how can any religious person who loves God, which praises God, communicates with him, just chuck the earth they've been given as a gift, all their life around it, and just stomp on it? You know?
Yeah, I mean,
spit on it.
I agree. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from with that. I mean, that's quite right. I mean, they tend to come from the idea that it's it's God's sort of test to us to give us these animals. Will we be resourceful with them? I've heard that, just to put that out there. It's not just me coming up with stuff. It's their sort of way of.
Even if you were coming up with stuff, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so ridiculous to say that you're praising this God so that you worship, and then exploit all of his creations for no reason at all, other than we need it to survive, which we don't, which we'll go into in another video. But yeah, that's a good sort of view on it. I mean, there was, I believe it's Jainism back in I think it was 7000 BC or around there. I'm doing a vegan nutritionist course, so I'm learning about the history of it currently. And they were a Indian. Yeah, yeah. So that's something. I'm just learning about all sorts about it.
Nice.
So there is a bit of delay, I think, but that's all right. It's all good. So yeah, I'm learning about that, and so the Jainists, they were an Indian religion a long time ago, and they believed in a sort of absolutely no violence, just compassionate lifestyle. So they were non-violence and non-exploitation to animals, and I think that's such a great way of living your life. Like, that's such a great way, and they had the right sort of morals all that time ago. So how we've developed to become that sort of archaic again, and back, we've sort of devolved, if that's a word, devolved into what we are now as a society, and now we're slowly getting better again. But how can we have gone from that point of complete non-violence and compassion and loving everyone and animals to the animal industry as it is now? It doesn't add up, and I like their way of thinking about it.
Yeah, it's a very it's probably that opposition which we find ourselves in the middle of today. Not to alienate any non-vegans that may be watching this. If anything, you're the target audience, but in some way. But so greed has kind of got to a place of authority throughout society, and you can see this over time. And as soon as that happens, we become much more materialistic, and when we become much more materialistic, our morals kind of shift aside, because we think that fulfillment comes from physical and tangible objects of worth, which originally is fictional and purely a concept of no actual worth. So money doesn't exist, only exists in our minds.
Yeah.
And And I feel like, because I've been studying a guy called Wim Hof.
Hmm.
That's how you write it. I think it's pronounced Wim Hof. He's the Iceman. I won't go into that too much, but he goes on about reigniting the primitive being within us and connecting to the world around us.
Right.
And that's something that's been lost. And I feel like because they were more in touch with that, they're more obligated to follow that kind of lifestyle. Sorry if that rambled.
No, not at all, not at all. I like your wisdom. You've got a lot of. You're very smart about education, learning, educating yourself about that whole thing. So
Cheers.
on another ethical point,
You too, buddy.
you've got thank you. You've got the idea of humane slaughter. Now,
Yes.
obviously, for a vegan, they'd instantly say this isn't possible, which it isn't, because humane is a way of causing no pain, or well, that's how it should be, but it's not.
Yeah, so humane, I think the definition is roughly, I mean, we have computers around us, but from memory, it's to do something benevolently and with compassion
That's it, yeah.
for another being.
Hmm. Spot on.
Yeah. And so the only context in which a humane killing could be justified, and not necessarily, although I think it can be, is euthanasia.
Yeah.
So giving someone a gentle death who's already terminally ill. So when you're talking to a non-vegan,
Hmm.
when you're just generally talking about it, and they'll say out of nowhere, prompted or otherwise, they'll say, "Oh yeah, but as long as," and as you brought up, as long as it has a humane slaughter and it has a happy life.
Mm.
In other words, they mean as long as it's free range.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that?
So, personally, you mean?
Yeah, personally.
I would say, first of all, no animal is going to have a happy life when its life is being ended before its natural time by someone else. That's the first thing. The second thing to say is that free range, by definition, is it's pretty much, as far as I know, for hens and that, it's access to outdoors, and they'd keep all the water and the food and everything they need to survive indoors, so the shelter and everything. So naturally, they're not going to want to leave. However, they keep so many in there at one time. It's ridiculous. They haven't got not much space anyway. So to say that an animal is happy living in those conditions and being exploited for their whole life, for example, with dairy cows, being forcibly impregnated and the semen taken away from the bulls and the children being taken away, there's no such thing as a happy life for those animals when that's happening to them. That's sort of my way of talking to them about it.
Can I challenge you further and say, what if, so say it's a very small farm, so it's not mass scale, so they don't, and I know this isn't necessarily true, but say they don't have any of that kind of suffering. It is literally just a family farm, just a couple pigs. They're almost like pets, but they're going to kill them later on. So they do have a very happy life, almost like a dog.
Mm-hmm.
How then would you respond, as opposed to saying the state of free-range farm?
You'd have to question sort of their morals by raising this pig, or say it's a pig, raising these pigs up through their life, caring for them, and then ending their life with a knife. That rhymed, sorry. Didn't mean to.
Okay.
But sorry, that's got me there. No, oh god. It's not a funny topic. It's not a funny topic at all. I mean,
that's a beautiful thing about laughter, though.
Yeah, it helps through everything.
Awkwardness, discomfort.
Absolutely. So, you know, for a little family run sort of business, or a farm, even if it's just for like a hobby, you're still, you know, bringing these animals up into, I don't want to say sort of, you know, captivity, but if it is on a farm with like one field to go around for their whole lives, that would sort of be captivity. Like, I understand they've got space to go, but it's like with aquariums and SeaWorld. Imagine being a massive, you know, a whale and only having a tiny bit of room to swim around for the rest of your life. It's not fair. It's exploitation at the end of the day. And to use these animals after giving them a life like that to then kill them and eat them, you've got to question sort of why. Why would you even do that? You know, you wouldn't kill and eat your dog or your cat.
Okay.
You wouldn't do that, and that's just because society, and it's our idea of what is acceptable in society to do and not to do. So obviously, cows, pigs, sheep, and chicken, they're totally fine, but everyone are being hypocrites and saying about the dog and cat market in China.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Now, one more question before I kind of make a point
Hmm.
and kind of respond to what you've said. So now it's not just a small family farm with animals that have a happy life. We're going to take the common consumer view of it's a huge farm, but they still all manage to have very happy lives, but they then have to be killed in order to feed the nation. How would you go against that concept?
Well, I mean, first of all,
Apart from humane slaughter and that
yeah, okay, so
what other reasons? That's what I'm really saying.
other reasons, towards the idea of, you know, mass farms. I'm just trying to understand the question better, make sure I've got this. um,
Yeah, sorry. If you want me to repeat it, I'll do so.
no, I'm just thinking. Okay, so if it's a big farm from the common consumer's view of it, I'd still argue that by supporting that industry, you know, yeah, you're supporting the jobs and you're supporting the food stuff of the nation, but there are more sustainable ways and more easier ways and ways to make more food other than just the meat and the dairy industry. You know, it's more sustainable in a patch of land. You could make a lot more crops instead of, you know, crops for the animals for the food, and that's one of the environmental factors. You know, the rainforest fires in the Amazon were caused for crops for dairy cattle, I believe. So without that third party there, you'd have so many more crops for us and not just for the animals. If you get what I mean, that's sort of the idea of it, other than humane slaughter.
Yes, yes. I think that's very well put. And what I find fascinating about the whole free range thing, especially when people bring it up that are non-vegan, okay? So I can't find one person who says mass farming, you know, so the most common farming, non-free range farming. I haven't heard anyone say that's okay. They always go, yeah, I hate that. But free range is okay. Okay, so if they say free range is okay as opposed to the alternative, that means they care enough about the lives of the animals, okay? So they do have some level of compassion and care for them. So, but then they're left in this predicament. Do we either be very cruel to the animals, and this is assuming free range is good, right? The best. It's just they get a shortened life. So they're either asking for animals to have a horrible life and be treated in a way they disagree with themselves, or the world can no longer cope with the most unsustainable form of farming, which is free range farming, which requires so much landmass because of, as you've briefly said, animals eat way more than humans, and a lot of the crops we grow are for those animals, and animals only make 18% of our daily calories. So no earth, or animals being treated horribly. And I think we can both agree that both of those options are
They're
terrible.
both horrible. Yeah, they're both terrible, terrible things.
Yeah, yeah. So, why are we messing around? Like this is from the vegan standpoint. So once again, if anyone who isn't a vegan is watching, please don't take this as an attack to you. I think, well, I hope me and Louie.
Yeah, no, we're both here to sort of spread awareness and teach
But-
people. You know, that's the reason that we're doing this.
Yeah. Yeah. And so the vegan just thinks, okay, I don't like either of those options. Option. Sustainably. Still not without any impact on the earth whatsoever. That's not possible.
That's impossible. Yeah.
You don't need to convince anyone of that.
No.
But we're going to eat without paying for demanding animals to be slaughtered. We're going to eat where we're not trashing the world as much. And it is only one big step, the single biggest step we can make, according to Oxford and a recent comprehensive study. But yeah, I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
That there is a third option.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, a common thing that I've covered in one of my previous videos is that, you know, people often say, you know, one person won't change anything, and that's just such a it's not a very educated thing to say. One person can change absolutely everything. Like one person and one person and one person, it all adds up, you know. Every little one person that does it adds up to a bigger picture. And I mentioned in my previous video about how, you know, Rosa Parks, that she was one person that made a big movement and changed the future of racism. And I got a comment about saying that they shouldn't be compared, but it should be, because it's still about that one person making their own difference for a greater cause, and I think that's amazing.
I think that segues very nicely into something, but before we get there, I think, and I notice this a lot with humour as well, so I think it's very important we lay this down before we progress onto the more sensitive comparisons. So, yeah, when we compare something to something else, we're, for a start, not saying it's exactly the same situation. We're saying elements of one situation can be seen. There are mutual elements between the two things being compared. So, for example, when we compare veganism to slavery, or if one were to compare anything to the Holocaust or any kind of tragedy, it doesn't necessarily have to be about the exact same content. It can be how people are treated, how protests arise. So if you hear anyone comparing something to a sensitive subject, don't automatically think that's highly inappropriate. I think in intellectual debates and discussion, you've kind of got to let that bit of yourself go and say, yes, we need to discuss about this. There's no room for, oh, is this appropriate, is it not? Because that doesn't make sense if we can't talk about such important things in history and bring them to the present. That's why they're so important, and learning the history is so vital.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, how would you first compare the two?
So,
slavery.
Between that and slavery. So, the way that they are kept, for a start, you've seen obviously the slaughterhouse footage. I'm assuming you have. Most vegans have, if they've watched, you know, documentaries, say Land of Hope and Glory. I couldn't get through that. I just couldn't do it. But to watch that, you soon see how they are used as slaves in a way, in that sort of sense, because they're trapped in little cages. Sometimes battery farms, etc., and you know they are used. We're using them without consent. That is, in a sense, slavery.
Yes.
Just having a drink.
I'm thinking about what you said as well. Okay, so What do you think about? So I'm sure you've heard of the word speciesism or speciesism.
Hmm.
I think it's speciesism. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
How would you how would you compare to that? It was a I don't know if he termed it, but he uses it a lot. A philosopher called Peter Singer.
Hmm.
He's kind of a modern utilitarian thinker, although he's vegetarian, which is a whole nother discussion
Yeah.
about philosophers. Honestly, oh. But what lines would you draw between speciesism and racism?
Well, it's a way of looking at it. So obviously, as our society, we care and we look after certain species, and then some we use. If you applied that to a human sense, there would be mass uproar, and that would be totally unacceptable in society. So, for example, if we didn't, as an example, and applying it, if we, still had slaves nowadays, and we still treated, black people as slaves, I think most people would have woken up by now and realised. You never know. I mean, there would have been movements in that, but if we were still using that would be racism. And to say that these people don't have to be, but these people do. That can be applied when looking at species. So cows, pigs, sheep, chicken, we're going to use them, but dogs and cats and pet fish and all the pets that we have. Pets is a very key word there, because there's certain ones that we keep, and then some that we don't. And then they're fine. We're going to look after them. We're going to care for them, give them a good life, and we're not going to eat them or use them for any of their resources that belong to them. So, in that way, it does compare to racism in speciesism. We are mistreating some species as opposed to others, which is definitely sort of the interlocking thing.
But
Mm-hmm.
how do you? Okay, so the definition of speciesism, and I think when you hear this, you'll easily see the parallels between this and racism, is to treat another species with prejudice based on nothing more than the fact that we are a different species.
Mm.
So you can just switch out the word species in that rough definition from memory with race.
Yeah.
And it's just, I have no reason other than I'm above you only because I'm part of a species which I didn't have a choice in being part of anyway. It's ridiculous. It's ludicrous.
Yeah, that does apply.
Just be born into this.
That applies not only that applies not only to race, but it can also apply to sexuality, which is something that is also quite prominent in sort of the society of today. If you were to swap all those words in, animals, yeah, exactly. If you were to swap those words in with it,
non-human animals,
it's no problem.
Yes.
Swap any of those words in, and it creates a whole different context, and you sort of start to understand, which is what you hope to tell people about in a way.
Mm-hmm. Is it right if I get up a quote and get you?
Yeah, of course, no problem.
Sweet. I heard this when I was studying philosophy, and
I wish I studied philosophy.
It's stuck with me ever since.
Yeah.
I just want to get the words exact.
No problem. Philosophy is a really cool thing when you're looking at veganism, because there's so many ways that so many sort of quotes by philosophers can be applied, and it's quite eye-opening to see the ideas of someone that may or may not be a vegan that can easily be reworded into a vegan philosophy.
Sorry, it's not. Oh, it's not Berkeley. Berkeley is some completely other guys like subjective idealism. Stuart Mill. It's really annoying me. Okay, I know a way to figure it out.
No worries. While you're doing that, I'm just going to quickly
Sorry
read
about
out.
this.
I'm going to read out the definition of slavery itself, just to link into what we've been talking about. So one of the definitions of slavery is obviously to be a slave, but we need something more sort of specific. So on Google, it's a condition of having to work very hard without proper remuneration or appreciation. So that does link to animal slavery. They are being forced to work and they're not getting anything back other than inevitable death. That is quite similar to how we used to be back in, the days where we had slaves, which is definitely a problem, and it needs to be looked at by everyone, vegan and non-vegan, just to make that change. So I'll let you do your quote.
You were the quote.
You got quote?
Did you say?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't hear that.
Go ahead. I'm done.
No, so the audio quality started to hiss a bit. I lost the end bit.
That's all right. Carry on.
Yeah, so comparing it to slavery as the definition you've just read out and what you said thereafter, and I think this applies to race, animals, any kind of species. And what Jeremy Bentham, that was his work, the philosopher's name, early utilitarian thinker, godfather of Stuart Mill, if anyone knows what that is. The question is not can they reason, nor can they talk, but can they suffer?
I like that. That's nice.
Such a clear line, especially with people that chuck in the plant argument. Yeah, it's very, and that was so early. That was so early in his time.
Yeah.
So early on.
That's very cool. I like that.
But
so
sorry, you go.
No, I was just sort of that's stuck with me. I'm trying to analyze that a little bit. I'm just thinking that's so very true. We always talk about how they haven't got a voice, so we've got to be their voice for them. But that's not always the point. So many there's people who have voices, but it just depends if they can suffer. Should we be causing it? I suppose that's what the whole idea of that quote is. I like that.
And that's not even talking about necessity. But something that I know that you brought up in your first veganism video on your channel.
Yeah.
Well, I think I could be mixed it with another vegan video or many. Sorry if I did, but
that's no worries.
It's that people often say, "Oh, we're advanced, we're top." Yeah, that's it. You did mention.
Yeah.
That humans are top hunters. We've mastered the craft, and we can just do what we want. And
yeah,
we kind of forget that. Yes, this is where it links to Peter Singer. Sorry, this was something on the list of things to bring up. So, that argument of us being more intelligent than animals and winning the hunting game, therefore justifying our cruelty to them, was challenged by Peter Singer, modern, contemporary Australian utilitarian philosopher. And he challenged it by saying, okay, if you're willing to do that to animals, are you willing to do that to a person who's severely, whether it's damaged or born with mental defects, to where they can't even move or communicate in the same way as non-human animals? Would you be willing to do the same thing to them?
Mm.
So cruelty being killing them for food or animal testing.
Right.
And a lot of people will then just resort to, well, no, why not? Because they're human. You know, they'll have a family who would then mourn, and it's like, okay, if they don't have a family, if they have no one that loves them, that is just. And I try to avoid hypothetical scenarios, but for principle, this is useful. If it was just this fella in the room and no one would know that you've done it, would you do it? He's human. And that's where we see this speciesism. He says, if that's what you're resorting to, then you're speciesist. And we all are speciesist to a degree. And that degree, as Earthling Ed kind of brings up, is necessity to survive. And we do have this Darwinian principle within ourselves of self-survival and survival of the species, hence reproduction, etc., etc. And I think even vegans acknowledge that, and we don't say, you don't even have to say that animals are on the exact same level of us in terms of who would you say first, the dog or the human in a fire. It would be natural for us to save a person because of that, and that's fine. That's a line that can be drawn. But when it's like, oh, there's a dog walking along the street, I've got some popcorn on my right, a dog on my left. Now let's just kick the dog and eat that for food. I've rambled on a bit to stupid.
No, absolutely.
I think you get.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's sort of playing on the idea that, you know, just because you can do something, why does that make it right to do it? And that links on to the idea of, you know, us being sort of the sort of superior species because we have a brain that has allowed us to develop sort of weapons and that. But if you put it down to real nature and actual natural physicality, if I try and take a lion down in a fight, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. Like I don't have claws. My teeth are this big. There's no way I'm biting his neck, right? Not that I would. Obviously, I'm vegan, but in theory, if I were to, I would be gone. It would be over for me.
Yeah.
So, and I think the same with a cow. To be honest, I think a cow could flatten me any day, like easily. You know.
To be fair, I've heard people have scary interactions with them.
Yeah, bulls. They're scary. They're scary, man. No, but a bull chased my dad once in a field. Probably like he thought he was going to die as well, but that's not the point.
Jesus,
we're going off topic. I'm going off topic.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, no, but basically, it links to the idea of just because we can do something, how does that like morally justify it? We can go out and kill someone. We can go out and rape someone. We can steal from the shop. You know, we can do so many things, but society tells us it's bad. And that's the thing, it's cultural. In some cultures, you know, it's okay to do some of these things. But in our culture, that's how it is, and that's how we've been brought up. So it's about waking up from that illusion of having our culture and our society shaping the way we live. That's what it's about.
I think that's well put. So on the last bit you said in terms of society, so we can do these things that society deemed to be bad, but we don't, because we recognise the value in not doing that. Right? That's the crux of what you said.
Yeah,
right
yeah.
At the end. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
No, absolutely. We know that it's wrong, so we don't.
So, yeah. And without talking about absolute morals or relative morals, I want your opinion on another utilitarian thinker.
Okay.
I'm not a utilitarian, if you're wondering.
Okay.
But I do like a lot of what they say. So you know the last guy I quoted, who said, "Can they suffer? That's the important bit." his godson, John Stuart Mill, who's an early advocate for female rights way before his time, and all these other kind of things. We take a lot of his influence in our modern politics, but he had a theory that society over time eventually gets rid of the bad things that have always been part of it, because the evil things, that's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Because these bad / evil things, if they stay in society, we will not be happy. And our happiness, to reach happiness, that is everyone's ultimate goal, to be happy. Even if that's doing something for someone else and making them happy, you can't make someone else happy without spilling a bit of happiness onto yourself. That's how it all works. So I know I've just messed up that explanation, but he says, so examples of this. Slavery was abolished because we recognised the misery it brings. It wasn't really that good for anyone in the end. So we got rid of it to make our society happier. Female rights for women. We recognise women as equal individuals, and for that to not be a premise for them to then endure any kind of prejudice. So we brought in rights. The next big, and then gays, bisexual, people of different sexualities, the same thing. And now we're reaching a point with animal rights, and we can see that health-wise, which we haven't dipped into, environmentally, which we've briefly looked into, and ethically, it doesn't do us any good whatsoever. So it's only a matter of time for that to also be removed, because it stands in the way of our happiness. So, sorry for the long. I hate to run around.
No, absolutely.
But what are your thoughts on that? Just spill out your brain.
I was just thinking as you were saying that about, the idea of a perfect society, and it's not possible. Every time we remove something from society, everyone's going to look at something different and think, oh, that's got to change. This is just one of the, I'm not belittling it at all, but this is one of the things in a long line of things that are wrong with society that we're slowly trying to phase out. The idea of a perfect society is ridiculous. It's never going to happen, because there's always going to be opposing conflicts, opposing views, because there's so many people in the world that have different views. Even if one person gets exactly the way they want it, how are they going to stop it from the next rebellion, from the next people disagreeing?